All I see here is fucking casket. Sword hat. Holy shit!
We turn to the city of Toronto masking rule that an international group calls.
Dude,
Let's bring in Dr. Zane.
Shut up.
We turn to the City of Toronto masking rule that an international group calls discriminatory and a violation of the religious freedoms. The policy requires security guards be clean-shaven to wear N95 masks, something members of the Sikh community say their faith doesn't allow them to do. CTV's Siobhan Morris joins us live with the story. Siobhan. Well, Michelle, members of the Sikh community right across the GTA are confounded and frankly hurt by this policy. They say it puts Sikh security guards kind of an impossible position of choosing a well-paying job that they chose or practicing their religion.
Yeah.
Bir Kawal Singh Anand took a job as a security guard at one of Toronto's respite centers for the homeless this spring. Then last month, an email.
If you want to work, from next week onwards, you'll have to be clean shaved.
The demand to shave is so that he can have an N95 at the ready if the center is dealing with a COVID-19 outbreak.
Those N95s need to be what is called fit tested, so they have to have a good solid seal around the nose and mouth, chin, and that is something that facial hair prevents from happening.
As a Sikh, Anand describes the request as being asked to peel his skin off.
That was very disturbing for me.
Oh,
And very humiliating for me. Everyone's freedom of speech and freedom rights have been protected.
No, not really. But
if I cannot follow my religion, this is something disgusting, right?
The city says the guards are employees of independent contractors, and they have to find ways to make the policy work.
And for review of any complaint that the city receives from a contractor or about a contractor, with respect to not accommodating or not adhering to the city's policy around anti-discrimination.
Anand says the accommodation he was offered wasn't acceptable.
The accommodation they mean by is that there will be some kind of demotion of my position and my period as well.
What's wrong with you guys? Like, honestly,
thrown out of their jobs.
The World Sikh Organization of Canada has been fielding calls from baffled security guards.
These security guards feel used. So
no, they are
used
and they get treated like shit.
They were able to serve wearing normal medical masks, and they can still wear normal medical masks. But
yeah, because that's like the dumbest shit I've ever heard. Oh,
they've been thrown out of their jobs for
Fuck
a rule
off.
that just makes no sense.
The city couldn't answer why the masks are required as regulations elsewhere lift.
The city's shelter system.
The World Sikh Organization of Canada wants guards to get their original jobs back and to be paid for the time they missed.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, I spoke with the Human Resources Director at ASP Security, where Anand worked. She says that the company did what it could to find accommodations for people
What
who
the
could
fuck
be
is
fitted for
this?
N95 masks, but she couldn't say how many people.
Are you
The other
fucking
two security
serious?
companies employed by the city, Garda World and Star Security.
Sorry,
didn't get back
you
to
late
us.
with your
Reporting
delivery.
live, I'm Siobhan Morris. Pauline, back to you.
Dude, why the fuck is it okay for people to drive like that in those stupid fucking vans? Oh, right, because there's nobody to report them to. Can't report them to the cops because they don't really fucking exist around here. Maybe they're all just too busy in St. Henry. Can't call it a fucking company because they're a third-party company. So there's no one to report them to. You'd assume that the authorities that your taxes are supposed to pay for, I don't know, maybe. But I know that they're very, very busy down at the water doing whatever it is they fucking do at 5 o'clock in the fucking morning.
Concert was beautiful.
Whatever.
But we live in America, and we have the Second Amendment, and we have the Supreme Court of the United States telling everybody they can carry a gun wherever they want. It's like Dodge City. I mean, so, like, we have to come to grips with what this country is about right now. We had a beautiful day out there today, except for some nitwit, either shooting from a window or shooting from somewhere, who has a gun. It probably shouldn't have had it. And that's, I mean, I was in Canada 2 weeks ago. Never thought about a gun. The only people I knew had guns up in Canada were police officers.
Not
and that's the way
anymore.
it should be here. But, I mean, look, in my lifetime, that's never going to happen. So, a lot of goofballs out there with guns, and they can get them anytime they want. So, this is what we have to live with.
Excuse me? Alright, if you guys are okay with your fucking kids getting shot, whatever. I don't even care. Fucking, well, I don't even know what the fuck. Who the fuck was that even? Like,
Welcome back. We join Chris McCusker from the City News 680 Business Center. Good morning to you, Chris.
like her.
Good morning. How are you? I'm doing all right. You've got a lot to get through today, and I want to start with Tesla because you've got some good news and you've got some not so good news.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did Elon Musk ruin Tesla?
Yeah, so a lot of news from Tesla. So first and foremost, Mel, we learned about a disappointing quarter of deliveries, a record month for production, and then came word about several weeks of downtime at multiple plants. So let me go through this. The electric car maker halting most production in its Shanghai plant the first 2 weeks of July. So right now,
Central
then it will
hub
stop
for
the Model
car
3 line for a 20-day stretch starting in July 18th.
Woohoo!
So upgrade work to
Yay.
boost output at both plants is expected to be completed by early August. At the same time, the car maker says it made more vehicles in June than in any month in history, but it was still short on expectations. My goodness. And of course, that COVID-related lockdown in China getting some of the blame. Tesla also set to report quarterly earnings on July the 20th. Shares in Tesla in the red in pre-market trade. Okay,
Yeah,
Wall
'cause the
Street
guy is
returns after a
fucking
day
dumb as
off, and you're
shit,
already
dude.
watching the price for oil. Mm-hmm. Yes, so Wall Street back in business today, and we've got futures markets in the red as it stands right now. There's actually a slight increase in the risk of a recession in the U.S. according to some calculations from Bloomberg. So it's about a 1 in 3 chance that there could be a recession stateside next year. But at the same time, there is talk in the U.S. That some of the tariffs on China could be eased. So markets may start the day lower. We don't know where it's going to end. As far as oil is concerned, those supply concerns, I guess, I shouldn't say supply issues, supply concerns are back. Oil about $109 this morning. Exports in Libya have dropped. And then in Norway, workers are set to strike, so it could affect output there as well. Also on these recession concerns, Mel, in the U.S., an analyst at Citi saying that oil could drop to $65 if recession takes a bite out of demand. So that's sort of a good news, bad news scenario. It would be probably good for gas prices, not so good for our stock market. Chris, we've got about 30 seconds left for you. I want to talk about car sales in Canada, specifically in the month of June. So
I can't imagine why we've already been talking about the sales of Canada.
They're down, actually. This is according to DeRoche Automotive Consultants, down 11.5% in June compared to a year earlier.
But cars are flying off the lots. They can't keep up with the demand of people who are buying cars off the lot.
Picture. But this, it looks like, at least for the moment, is more about supply chains, Mel. It's actually the lowest June sales since the recession in 2009. We don't want to talk about that. But of course, the supply challenges linked largely to semiconductor chip shortages created by the pandemic, continue to limit a rebound in sales.
So done with this shit.
A drop for the moment, and who knows where we go from here.
And people were like, why don't you take chips out of other things?
Chris.
Like,
okay, as always, appreciate it. We'll talk to you same time tomorrow.
Broken and going in the garbage anyway. Nothing to do with fucking chip shortage. There is not a chip shortage. I guarantee you that. Like, probably because fucking you have dumbasses that do fucking huge show events, whatever, for the new Tesla that is supposed to be like armored truck. We figured out bulletproof windows a long time ago. And you fucked it up not once, but twice. You whipped a rock at 2 different windows that were supposed to be unbreakable. And your fucking SUV was another epic failure on top of that. Each motor is in each wheel, like really dumb. That was great. You know, it's super great. Tesla was supposed to be a car that you could actually repair and fucking add to yourself. Until they started making the pieces so they were not copyable. And you couldn't do any kind of fucking work on it without certain fucking specific devices that they did not sell, that only Tesla was able to have.
We have some breaking news to bring you out of Ottawa. CTV News has learned former Saskatchewan Premier Brad Wall was involved with the so-called Freedom Convoy protests. CTV's senior political correspondent Glenn McGregor joins me now with more. Glenn, what have you learned in your investigation?
So-called.
Yeah, there are several cases before the criminal courts here in Ottawa involving organizers of those protests that essentially gridlocked the city for over 3 weeks in January and February.
My God.
These cases are kind of working their way through the courts, and in that process, the Crown prosecutors are filing evidence. Some of the evidence they filed against an organizer named Chris Barber, who's been charged with mischief, intimidation, obstructing police. He's currently out on bail in Saskatchewan. He's one of the more visible faces of the protest, one of the first people to be arrested after the federal government invoked the Emergencies Act. Now, police went through his cell phone when he was arrested, extracted all the text messages, all the phone calls. And surprisingly, we found out here at CTV that those records show he was in contact for several weeks with Brad Wall, the former premier of Saskatchewan. Mr. Barber is from Saskatchewan. Mr. Wall told us that he has relatives who are friends of him, and it was in that context that they spoke. But those records show that Mr. Wall was giving advice to Mr. Barber on managing kind of the communications of the Freedom Convoy.
Eat shit, please, sir.
Say 20 years, you find far more of them in line with Housing First, because in order to finance programs, you kind of have to be online with it.
What HUD did is they didn't require applicants to adopt Housing First in order to receive funding. What they did was they prioritized the point system of scoring applications so that it'd be really difficult to score high and not demonstrate that you've adopted a Housing First approach. So it's not necessarily a requirement, but for all intents and purposes, it is a requirement to get the funding, at least to score high enough to get to get the higher levels of funding.
In the 2000s, a significant shift began at the state and local level, with agencies and communities increasingly moving away from shelters and transitional housing strategies, and instead moving toward housing first, focusing on building of permanent supportive housing. As San Francisco's mayor, Gavin Newsom adopted a 10-year plan in 2004, which called for eliminating emergency shelters. As a result, San Francisco's emergency shelter capacity froze between 2004 and 2014, while all the resources were poured into building permanent supportive housing. However, housing development was extremely slow. Between 2004 and 2014, San Francisco built 2,699 units of permanent supportive housing. The decision to stop building shelters in 2004 received wide support among experts. But in retrospect, many acknowledged it was a bad policy.
Yeah.
Then Mayor Newsom said, we are no longer going to build homeless shelters.
Fucking close shelters.
We're going to put all of our money in permanent supportive housing. And I, amongst many, applauded that. I'm like, yes, let's focus on the solutions. But what we all failed to think about in the 10-year plan to end chronic homelessness,
where are they gonna go
well, there was 2,000 chronically homeless people, so let's build 2,000 units of permanent supportive housing. Well, that's smart, but nobody thought about the inflow. And this stuff takes time. So I think what Mayor Lee, especially Mayor Breed, did was course corrected. So you've got between 2002 and 2015, hardly any shelters got opened. And we course corrected in 2016. Policy decisions that people make that are based on feelings and opposed to data have really long-term impacts that don't get seen for years.
Today, San Francisco has gone back to building more shelters, trying to make up for what was lost during the 10-year plan period. Still, shelters only receive about 21% of the city's homelessness budget, while a lion's share goes into housing. What happened in San Francisco happened across California. In 2016, LA voters approved Proposition HHH, which authorized the city officials to issue up to $1.2 billion bonds with the aim of reducing homelessness by developing and remodeling permanent supportive housing. In 2020, the LA City Controller's Office issued an audit of how the Prop HHH money was spent, and what they found was staggering. According to the Controller's public report, projects in the primary Triple H pipeline are taking between 3 to 6 years to complete, with most set to open between 2023 and 2026. Almost a decade after the passing of the proposition. As of 2021, 5 years after the passing of the proposition, only 14% of the projects have been completed, a total of 1,142 apartments. Development costs are high and continue to rise. In 2021, the average per unit cost was almost $600,000. Some units are extremely expensive to build. 14% of the units exceeded $700,000. And at least one project is estimated to cost nearly $837,000 per unit. That price tag, $600,000 per apartment unit, is not an outlier in California.
High cost of land, high cost of construction, specifically in an area like the Bay Area that's very urban. The land is more expensive, and the cost of construction is higher. So roughly, it does cost anywhere from $500,000 to $750,000 per unit to build affordable housing.
I think that the shared housing model is the future, and that it's the only way. It's going to be the number one program that's going to be the engine of reducing homelessness in California, because we're not going to build our way out of it. We didn't build our way out of it in New York City. I think that the people in the homelessness sector, and I apologize if this sounds critical, but I think there's a paternalism streak. There's also a bit of a denial about some of the capabilities of people and the ingenuity and energy that people who are homeless can put into this situation. And they also seem to think that the only solution is an apartment by yourself.
Spending billions of dollars on permanent supportive housing is only the first step. Because these housing units are permanent, governments need to pay for the operating costs forever. This raises a question.
Just give me the materials and go
as we
build my
house
fucking
more
house.
and more homeless individuals,
Fucking
are
leave
our
me alone.
governments able to pay for the ever-rising costs?
With one-time dollars, you may be able to do something like purchase a building or renovate a building. And that is something that we're doing with the state dollars, like, for example, with the
I'll
Home
just
Key
buy a
program.
building.
But that does not give you the ongoing funding that you're going to need to operate that building or to pay for the services for the clients who are going to be housed in that building.
Let's talk about like what it costs to actually provide permanent supportive housing in San Francisco, and that's housing for homeless people that has on-site support services, which many people need to stay housed successfully. That costs closer to $3,000 a month. Why does it cost that? Because it's freaking expensive to live here. I would like somebody to find me a one-bedroom apartment in San Francisco for $2,000. Like Bill Bug doesn't exist. That's a unicorn. There's like a range of like housing first programs that we have to look at. And again, San Francisco, unfortunately, we tend to think that's just permanent supportive housing, but it's not.
Most people would agree that having a safe place to sleep is a human right. However, people differ largely on what that place should be.
What's the solution?
The solution is making sure that we have every human being in San Francisco has a permanent, affordable house.
You can't just give everyone a house.
You certainly can.
No, you
every
can't.
Every human being has a right to housing.
You're talking about a one-bedroom apartment?
Yeah,
For everyone. For anyone on the street should get a one-bedroom apartment.
Housing is a human right. Shelter is not housing. We have more billionaires per capita in San Francisco than anywhere in the world. We have the resources. We're just not distributing them appropriately.
But if we tax them more, then they will leave, right?
No, they will not, and I don't care. They can leave. We will live here and happily have a more diverse and beautiful city without the billionaires if they want to leave. We will take care of each other in a passionate and compassionate way. Prophecy has passed by the voters in San Francisco, which is giving us $400 million a year to spend on housing services. That's taking from the wealthy and giving to the poor. That's the right direction to go. We need to do more of that.
Like how much more? I feel like, if you tax the rich even more, for example, people like Elon Musk, they're gone. And then
Bye. Have fun in space, Elon. I don't give a shit.
I think shelter is a human right. That's what the United Nations actually is saying, by the way. I mean, the intention of that statement when they wrote that was not having a apartment unit in San Francisco is your human right. It was not that at all.
In terms of technicalities, the biggest distinction between permanent supportive housing and transitional housing.
I want a car that I can't fix myself ever, and
which if you can get people in on a lease,
if they want to turn off your
now
car
what's
at any
happening
point, they
is
can't.
the Fair Housing Act governs evictions.
Stupid.
Which is another objective of the Housing First advocates. Get more people covered under the civil rights entitlement of the Fair Housing Act so that fewer people can be evicted for things other than failure to pay rent, destruction of property, or criminal activity.
I still say New Zealand.
Under Housing First, chronically homeless individuals, those who have been homeless for a long time and also have mental health or drug addiction problems are provided with permanent supportive housing.
I haven't even been inside, so I can't imagine how that'd be possible.
Is that those permanent supportive housing should offer wraparound services, including mental health and drug addiction treatments. However, in practice, the model encounters many challenges besides the prohibitive costs of building housing. One challenge is that because services are offered, but participation is not required, people with mental illnesses or drug addiction may very well choose not to participate.
Some of the disadvantages of the supportive housing program is that those treatments are optional. And individuals with severe problems, severe mental illness, substance use problems, would in many cases find it hard to participate in those programs or be willing to participate in these programs without, a additional push or incentive to participate in those programs. And that's what leads to a very large proportion of people who are enrolled in permanent supportive housing programs to exit those programs and return to homelessness. So according to my data in Los Angeles County, between 10 to 20% of individuals who start permanent supportive housing programs would eventually return to homelessness.
The requirement is not on the participant. The requirement is on the provider. The provider is required to provide services to the participant, but there's no skin in the game for the participants. They have every opportunity to reject every service that is offered to them. Second, understanding this arrangement, if you're a provider, what kind of services would you provide? You would provide low-cost services that don't impact your bottom line, your operational costs, if they're rejected. So the services are things like what I call drive-by case management or transportation services.
When Housing First was originally proposed by Dr. Sam Sambaras in New York, he had an 1-to-8 ratio between staff and clients on site. However, in practice, that ratio varies across different permanent supportive housing sites.
Those teams, called assertive community treatment teams or programs for assertive community treatment, have a 1 to 10 caseload ratio, 1 to 10. Or less, 1 to 8, if the person is also homeless and needs not only clinical, but needs housing, so you have to work with landlords and other neighbors and so on.
Whatever.
But that's a reasonable caseload ratio for people who have severe mental illness.
The biggest challenge that I had being a case manager was connecting people to services. Because first of all, my caseload was 40 people, okay? Which meant that I could talk to a couple of people. So some people I would only talk to once a month. Some people I would talk to once a week.
It's terrible. It's malpractice. If you do it on the cheap and you're compromising program fidelity, this is where program fidelity is tied to outcomes.
People think of Housing First, they think there's a doctor and a psychiatrist on site. That's a joke. That does not happen. That's a bunch of crap. I'm sorry to be so direct. Maybe that happened 20 years ago in New York with the guy that founded Housing First because he himself was a therapist and everybody in his unit was struggling with mental illness, so he had a bunch of clinicians on board there. The reality is that it's usually a few case managers, some people with lived experience and recovery from addiction, maybe formerly homeless people that are trying to help out their brothers and sisters because they've been there and they know what it's like to have been on the street. Okay, and that's great. But it's not all these wraparound services that everybody promotes it to be. Let's just be real.
What we did for 20 years was we funded shelters to become multi-service social welfare healthcare organizations that essentially provided a low quality of service by unlicensed professionals to people. Okay, so that to me was the wrong direction. Housing First as a concept, as a principle, was a corrective to that, to say we should get people what they need most. And what the homeless system can deliver is getting people into housing. But at the same time, yes, Housing First has also become ideological. And some people just are holding on to it in a narrow interpretation, and that there can only be one way. When we know that, there's a lot of diversity in the population and we have to figure out the solution for each person.
While billions of dollars are spent on building a few thousand permanent supportive structures, so many people are still sleeping on the streets.
LA County and San Francisco City have been reasonably hospitable to the homeless over time. They've allowed encampments. They've allowed people to live outside.
I don't get it. What are you allowing and not allowing?
So as a result, it encouraged some people to migrate there.
Stop.
So I think San Francisco has more migratory individuals that are coming in to live there. Certainly the weather helps in that situation.
Fucking,
so there might be some of that as well.
The official data would tell you that about 30% of unsheltered people come from out of San Francisco County. I don't believe that that data is actually very accurate. At least 50% of the people in tents who I spent a year and a half or a year engaging with every day when I was at HSUC are not from San Francisco. But I think a lot of people are coming here seeking drugs. It's easy to get here. It's inexpensive.
You go to the Tenderloin, however, and the demographic is different. You'll have a lot of young white kids that are on the street that are not from San Francisco. And I'm sorry to be so blunt. I'm just being honest. They come from Northern California. They come from Oregon and up as far north as Washington. Mainly, it's a regional magnet, primarily for people that live like in Santa Rosa, that lived in Santa Rosa, Sacramento, maybe Mendocino counties. They come from the Central Valley, Yuba City, Merced, Fresno, and they come to San Francisco. They're not from here. They might be from California, but they're not natives of San Francisco.
I want to stay here because the difference of the people that are here. I'm from New York. I'm from the Bronx. And New York, as you know, is the melting pot of the world. People are a lot ruder over there. But here, people in California, that laid back, easy California style. You got millionaires living next door.
It's a community here.
Yeah, it really is.
So many folks saying it's just housing first, et cetera. All of these, buzzwords and nomenclature, but things were getting worse on the street. I'm very pro housing. We need to develop more housing in California. And the fact of the matter is, it's the most difficult state in the nation to build it because of so many rules and regulations that this legislature and governors have ignored. It's too difficult and it takes too long to build housing in California, period. So you can talk about housing first all you want, but if it takes you 7 years to build something, it's not going to work.
Housing first and permanent supportive housing, in a way, it's been so oversold that people realize you can't tell me that I'm not going to see any difference on the streets until every single person who's homeless has their own housing unit. Because I know what that means is that I'm just going to be waiting forever. You need to tell me what you're going to do about public disorder while we're waiting for all the housing to arrive.
While all of that's happening, all these people are on the street waiting, on the street, using drugs, right? Because of all the trauma, the daily trauma that they're facing on the street. Half of those people aren't going to be alive to realize that housing when it comes online. And that's where the real tragedy is occurring here in California.
Even when the shelter space is available, some homeless choose the streets over shelters. Some homeless sleep in shelters at night, but go back to their tents during the day. Why would they do that?
I think it was close to 60% of all unsheltered homeless people preferred a tent village over an actual congregate shelter. Not over other kinds of housing, but over a shelter.
I'd rather stay here.
Why?
Oh, they have curfews. They restrict how much property you can have. They want to tell you when you're going to come in and out and everything like that. And I really don't need that.
I know the shelters aren't great. I know they have rules, like no weapons.
Yeah, that's the biggest problem. The rules of no weapons in the shelter.
But I promise you, it's better than what's out there on the street.
No, it's not. Have you been on the street?
They've got used to it. I got used to living on the street. You rationalize it really quickly.
Get the fuck
And
out
you
of
start
here,
meeting people out there, and you think you have friends. Those same friends will steal from you too because they're drug addicts.
Yeah, so your immediate fucking family.
And they were just doing. They were
No
really
fucking
like
say
caught
you're
up in their
welcome.
substance use, and they just needed to be close to their dealer, and they didn't want to go into a place where they weren't going to be able to
Are
use
you
safely.
fucking kidding me?
We're worried about their own safety. You're in a hotel room by yourself, or even in housing by yourself. You're safer if you're with somebody else and you're with a group of people.
Bridge Housing created this new metric, this new term that they called dual residency. So somebody has a bed inside the shelter and then they have a tent outside. And that's how they were able to show us that, our resources were not being, ill spent. And so for us, the residents, that's not what we were told or agreed to. So that was incredibly frustrating to hear that they had, created this new metric now to explain that people had, resources inside, but they still had tents outside.
It was anywhere between 10 and 15% of the people who we engaged with were either housed in private housing that they told us about, or we were able to look them up in a data system I spoke about, and to see that they were housed somewhere, or they had shelter somewhere, or they were in a SIP hotel, or even in a safe sleeping site. I totally understand why people were doing that. But if you think about it, then it's costing the city like on both ends. Like we're having to try to resolve the situation of, an unsafe encampment in a public thoroughfare.
This. You guys don't want fucking homeless people off the street. How the fuck would you make money off the homeless? That's the only reason why we're talking about them. Otherwise, you guys don't talk about the fucking homeless. No one gives a shit. You finally found a way to profit off of them. Congratulations.
That is such bullshit, you guys. Token knew I was cheating off of him, so he deliberately put down the wrong answers. Why would he do that? I flunked that test too. I don't understand fractions. They don't make any sense. That's not the point, you guys. Why is Token out to get me? There's something going on
Another
here.
school shooting today has left students in shock and disbelief.
Yeah, Token's probably sick of you cheating off of them all the time. But why now? That's the question, Kyle. I always cheat off Token. Why did he choose now to hurt me?
Stanley! Stanley, oh my God! Baby! Oh, you're okay!
Hey, Mom.
It's all right, Stanley. We're gonna go home and talk about this with your dad. And we will get through this as a family. Come on, get in the car. Stanley, well, do you want to tell your father about what happened at school today?
I flunked my math quiz.
No, the other thing.
What other thing? What happened at school today?
Oh, the school shooting?
Yes, the school shooting.
Oh, yeah, some kid shot up the school.
Who shot up the school? Was it you?
No.
Did you get shot?
No.
No.
Oh. Well, what's this about failing a math quiz?
Are you serious? Did you not hear what your child said? Kids died at his school.
Sorry, Sharon.
Sorry, Sharon. Are you all acting like this is normal? What is wrong with you people?
Oh my God, I'm Sharon.
What's up, Mom's ass?
Hey, Sharon, you doing okay?
No, I'm not okay. Children were shot. They were killed at a school where they were supposed to be safe.
Uh-huh. What else is going on?
Why does there need to be anything else? Are you kidding me?
I'm sorry, Sharon.
Why isn't anyone else emotional?
Hon, when was your last... you know how sometimes things can seem like a little bigger deal because, you're down there?
Don't you dare suggest that I'm only emotional because
I'm just pointing out that it is around that time.
Get out, Randy! I'm not overreacting!
Okay, love you, honey. I'll leave you alone. Well, another 3 days of this, probably.
I keep thinking, when will be the time that I get the call, you know? When will I answer the phone and find out my son, my daughter were killed at school?
Yeah, I see.
I live in constant fear that I won't be there to protect my children when something happens to them.
Well, Sharon, have you maybe considered that your feelings are partly due to handkerchief balls?
What?
Handkerchief balls. Handkerchief out the balls. Red handkerchief. No more handkerchief. No more red. Zero. Empty. Old lady.
What I'm saying is that I'm so overwhelmed that
Old lady, where's my dick? Where's my dick?
What the hell are you talking about? I don't understand. God damn it! Stop acting like there's something wrong with me. Something's wrong with you. All of you. Try having some goddamn compassion. Sharon, you have to come quick. What is it? There's another shooting happening at the school right now. It just started. Maybe we can make it in time. Oh my God! Come on, we have to hurry. No, Sharon, you go ahead first. Why? You should go. What the is going on?
Where do I begin to tell the...
It was a violent long weekend in Calgary. On Saturday, a firefighter was dragged by a man driving a stolen vehicle in the city's northwest. The suspect was caught soon after, but not before allegedly ramming into a peace officer's vehicle outside of Calgary. The firefighter was taken to hospital with minor injuries, and the suspect faces 25 charges. Also on Saturday night, police say a shooting on 14th Ave and 1st Street Southwest was targeted and are still looking for suspects. A man in his 40s suffered multiple.
What? This is fucking so stupid.
That was something I felt like discrimination.
Burkaval Singh Anand was 2 months into his job as a
as they struggle with staff shortages. Hospitals overwhelmed by the pandemic's onslaught are still facing a number of challenges, including limited hospital beds and a backlog of surgeries. It's now led to unprecedented wait times in some areas. I want to bring in Dr. Christopher Labos, epidemiologist and cardiologist. He's in Montreal today. Great to see you, Dr. Labos. And I know where you are keeping a close eye, of course, on emergency rooms, the wait times for patient care. But you're also seeing an increased number of COVID-19 patients coming into the hospital. So talk to us about what's happening there and what you're seeing.
Well, the numbers are not going in the right direction.
Yeah.
As you said, the healthcare system took
No, that's not why.
And it never fully recovered. And
fuck out of here, bro.
Burned out. And
No,
you're starting to see emergency rooms
not burnt out. They're pissed because you said they'd be compensated, and they weren't.
Staff shortages. And all this is happening in the
What a
context
joke,
of more and more patients getting sick and more patients ending up in hospitals. So you have it coming from a lot of different directions, and things are not okay. You have a lot of people who are saying things like, "Oh, we're going to be fine. This wave is going to be mild." And they've said that sort of thing before, and they've always been wrong. Every successive wave puts more and more strain on the healthcare system, and there's only so many insults the system can take.
Insults the people who are doing the work can take, maybe.
You're starting to see the beginnings of it. You have a lot of people who have quit. You have a lot more people who are talking about quitting and walking away.
A lot of them cannot afford to work anymore.
The thing is, we can always build more
They only
hospitals. We
paid
can't create
into
more
fucking
people. And when
school
personnel is the
fees
issue,
for years, and they put themselves in
this
debt
was
to be
something
doctors and
you,
nurses.
raised the alarm bells
Pay
on
back
a number of
fucking
medical
debt until you're
professionals,
50.
Doctors, nurses were saying there is going to be a problem at some point, not just when we're dealing with the number of cases or number of people coming into the hospital,
the boy
but a
call,
burnout and
cried
people
wolf?
not either deciding to make a career change or just not being able to come into work because they need to take time off.
Is
So
when there
what
was
do you want
really
to
a
see
wolf.
being done? Because this is not,
Nobody
this
came.
isn't a shock. This was something that you were warning about for quite some time.
Right. So, the long-term solution is there has to be more hiring. There has to be, the class sizes.
You know what? How about stop firing people
programs that give
over a hat?
Certification to work in healthcare. Those class sizes need to increase because we just need more people. In the short term, though, there's going to have to be, there has to be some accommodation for the people who are still working in healthcare, who need time off, who need more resources. But a lot of stuff that would help is non-medical assistants in hospitals. If you hired more administrative staff to just handle the paperwork, that would take a lot of the burden.
Yeah, it's obviously all the
much of
paperwork.
my
It's a
day
big
spent doing
problem.
paperwork.
Like,
so much of of what
you guys are
nurses do
fucking
is not
useless.
actually nursing care.
Absolutely
So if you
useless.
could give them the assistance to allow them to actually do nursing care and take a lot of the administrative stuff off their plate, that would help. So there's a lot of things that we can do. To be a recognition that we have an aging population, we're going to need more healthcare, not less, and you can't cut the budgets of healthcare and expect things to stay the same as demand rises.
Fucking Legault's got it covered. Fucking throws them in a home and fucking leaves them to die in their own shit.
They're staying healthy. We know that Last week, NACI recommended booster shots for the fall, as we are anticipating there is going to perhaps be another surge. Several provinces, we understand, have yet to roll out that fourth shot. But what's your advice here? Because again, from the start of this, of course, we're talking prevention. Your advice to the general population on this?
Well, I think we are going to need a booster to get us through the next few months because we were expecting a wave. The fact that it's coming this early has sort of skewed plans a little bit. I think a lot of us, myself included, were planning for this fourth dose really optimally to be in the fall to take us through the winter months and ideally to even be an Omicron-specific vaccine, which is what's being talked about now, sort of a new vaccine that's updated to reflect the new Omicron strains. The fact that cases are surging now has changed the calculus on that a little bit. And so if cases stay low, you might be better off waiting for that Omicron-specific vaccine, which might come out in October, maybe November. But if cases continue to surge, then the risk-benefit balance changes. And now you might, especially the high-risk people, might need one sooner to protect them from the surging cases. So a lot's going to depend on how the case numbers play out over the next few weeks.
Indeed, I know we're going to be keeping a
specialist with St. Joseph's Healthcare in Hamilton. And Dr. Chagwa, a lot of variables here. Let's start with people who have had 3 vaccine doses. What is their level of protection right now?
So we can break this down into protection.
Hey everyone, it's Dr. Romani. Welcome back to this YouTube channel on narcissism. And I have a new podcast called Navigating Narcissism. You can check it out wherever you listen to your podcasts. And if you want more information about it and links and all of that are in the video notes. So please check it out. It's very different than what you hear on this channel. And I think it's going to give you some interesting new perspectives and new really important ways of thinking about narcissism and some fascinating stories. So today we're going to talk about this, because I've heard this over and over again, this statement. A person saying, oh my gosh, I am a survivor of a long-term narcissistic relationship, and I feel like I wasted my life. So let's break that down.
Can't even fucking imagine.
Of all the many things that survivors of
15 fucking years of a wasted life. That sucks.
One of the hardest. I hear this idea
I've
that
only
I've
fucking
wasted
had
my
to do
life
3 years
from
of my
folks who
fucking
come
wasted
into their
life.
recognition of narcissism and how it has affected them quite a bit later in life. Perhaps a 60-year-old who finally of their relationship that their parent had with them, and shortly they learn that right before their parent dies, for example. A 70-year-old person after a 40-year marriage figures it out. A person who worked 35 years in a job and recognizes they were underpaid and underappreciated and now are in a precarious position going into older age because of a controlling, tyrannical boss who claimed that they had their best interests at heart, but didn't. It's not always this long term. Some folks in even briefer relationships or even at younger ages also feel the same way. I feel like I wasted my life. There are those who simply don't get it and those who do. And there's that tiny sliver of human beings who won the human lottery and never have to deal with narcissism. When you transition from not understanding narcissism to understanding it, it can be a painful cold bucket of water in your face. It can literally be physically painful when you look back and believe that you wasted your adult life on a relationship that was never going to yield compassion or love. I don't believe that. I don't believe you wasted anything. You did live a life. You may have lived it under a faulty premise. For example, my parent loved me or my partner was invested in our marriage, but you did live your life. Many survivors of narcissistic abuse end up with some real virtues that either they brought in or cultivated during the course of the relationship.
Garfield.
Patience, resilience.
Oh shit, it's actually made by Garfield.
Problem-solving skills, compassion, despite it being tested on the daily, empathy, kindness, wisdom. Now, I do have to acknowledge also what gets lost in these relationships. Self-compassion, self-forgiveness, peace of mind, a sense of safety.
No fucking.
Let's talk about inflation as well. So, a shocking comment, honestly, from the Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell, where he was giving a recent speech at a panel in which he basically admitted that the Fed doesn't know anything about inflation. Let's take a listen.
One way to say it would be I think we now understand better how little we understand about
That's
inflation.
not very reassuring.
No, it is.
No,
Honestly,
it's
this
not.
was
It's actually
unpredicted.
infuriating.
Yeah, so we now understand better how little we understand about inflation. Okay, well, I guess, Chair, very good in order to hear from the person who is probably singularly most responsible for handling all of our fallout from this as a result of our fallout from the government. And let's put this up there, which was a single other takeaway, which is that, we are probably just going to have to accept a much higher risk of recession to combat inflation. And what the chairman points to in this discussion on this panel is looking back at the legacy of the 1980s. He says he doesn't want to be compared to Paul Volcker, and sure, he's not raising rates to 19% or anything like that, but 5 to 9%, all of that looks very much in the realm of possibility. And within that realm of possibility, Crystal, may not be a 1981 style recession, but it could still be a recession in which we would have 6, 7, 8, 9% unemployment. And given the supply chain problems that we still have, in many ways, the 1980s recession and more was probably easier to deal with from a sheer monetary perspective. Just putting us simply in a recession and causing high unemployment and nuking consumer demand would maybe deal with 1/3 of the problem with high prices right now. So it's not a victory, in my opinion, to have a 30% reduction in the gas price or the food price when 70% could come from dealing with the supply side factors. But of course, the Federal Reserve has no say in any of that. That's all up to our policymakers.
Yeah, the cure here could be worse than the disease, is basically what you're saying. If there's any doubt whether or not we're in a recession today, Chairman Powell is determined to make sure it's very clear to all of us that we're actually in a recession in the future. I mean, you hear more and more comments like this from him, saying we need to get wages down when obviously, wages are already not keeping pace with inflation. We know that the Federal Reserve has very limited tools to ultimately deal with inflation, and those tools do not actually target the core, most dominant reasons that we have inflation at this point. Not only that, but something that I just sort of learned about recently with some great writing from Skanda and from the American Prospect is it's not just that the Fed only can target demand. It's that actually when they hike interest rates, it means you make the supply situation worse as well, which is incredibly logical when you think about that. It makes it less likely that companies invest in building out the infrastructure and supply chain, working through those supply chain issues and having the cash available to do that. So you're actually having a deleterious effect on one side. So very unclear that their actions are going to solve the problem they are intended to solve. And there is some recognition of that from some dissident voices in Washington. Let's put this last part up on the screen here. Politico has an article saying no more whispers, recession talk surges in Washington. And they quote, first of all, the piece is just an acknowledgement that everybody in Washington, up to the administration and up to Biden, now acknowledges this is likely a reality that we're headed towards. I think it's very unlikely we can avoid it, since by some metrics we're already.
And now something I've been waiting weeks to bring you. It's the extraordinary Matt Walsh, the man behind the groundbreaking documentary, What is a Woman?
Excuse me?
What is a woman? Can you tell me that? Well, you're at the Women's March. You must have some idea. Please, if one person can tell me what a woman is.
You are not here for women. Ask you to leave.
What is that? A woman is not anything in particular.
There is not one particular thing.
It could be many things to many people.
Some women have penises, right? Some men have vaginas.
I like scented candles, and I've watched Sex and the City.
Yeah,
How do I know if I'm a woman?
that's a great question.
You're not a scientist. You're not a gender studies major.
No,
How do you know that you're a man?
I guess because I got a dick.
Kim,
I don't know. Do you bleed for consecutive days every month and not get the satisfaction of dying? Then maybe you're a woman. Do you feel uncomfortable all the fucking time? Like you're constantly wrapped in saran wrap and your clothes are too small or too big, or you're revealing too much skin and you might get raped? Then you might be a woman.
Well, she also has a book by the same name, and he traveled across America and other parts of the world seeking to answer that key question. I began by asking Matt why he made this documentary in the first place.
I can't.
Well, it starts with just recognizing that gender ideology is this pervasive, toxic influence in our culture across the world, across the Western world.
Oh, it's ridiculous.
And,
like, it's so fucking stupid.
That,
who fucking cares?
That it's been so successful in claiming so many people's minds. It is really quite hollow at its core. And it seemed to me, going back years, that just a couple of questions really bring down the whole house of cards, starting with the question, which is in the title of the movie, of course, what is a woman? If you can't define what the word woman is, then nothing that the gender ideologues say makes any sense. None of the claims that they make any sense if they can't define the term. And as we discovered filming the documentary, they certainly cannot define the term.
No, they can't. Even women at the
Do you annually have to go and make fucking casual conversation with a stranger while he violates your lady parts?
There is a hero that emerges in
and then fucking have them tell you that everything's tip-top shape. Here, take his little piece of fucking whatever, hormones, and we'll just shove it in your body. That's how you know if you're a woman.
Children's hospitals in the United States.
Hopefully your body doesn't reject it.
That's a phalloplasty. That's a bottom surgery. We have 5 children's hospitals in the United States telling girls that they can be boys at $70,000 a pop in a surgery that has a 67% complication rate. That will kill me from infection that I can't sue on. We're butchering a generation of children because nobody's willing to talk about anything.
Holy shit.
Really does take rare courage to put yourself out there and speak so honestly, Matt, because you know they're going to be attacked for telling their story.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And there's a really interesting contrast between, we talked, of course, to people on both sides of the issue, including so-called experts who are proponents of this stuff. And for them, they were very evasive, didn't want to talk about anything, always acting like they had something to hide, very vague and sort of abstract in their answers. Then we talked to Scott Nugent, and we just heard the clip there, and she's very open, very kind of raw and honest, willing to talk about anything, kind of laying it all out there. And I do find it to be heroic, especially, to go through the whole process of quote unquote transitioning and then to turn around and warn other people against it. I think that's a really powerful thing. And it's more powerful than, because you and I can sit here and say, here are the problems with these kinds of procedures. But for someone who's actually been through it and kind of crossed that bridge, for them to turn back around and shout to anyone else who might cross it and warn them against it, I think is even more powerful. So that's why I think that, interview in the film was
not fucking
really effective.
normal.
As you mentioned, you spoke to doctors who perform these surgeries, irreversible surgeries on some very young patients. Let's hear from one of those doctors you interviewed.
What's the youngest patient that you've operated on?
The youngest patient I've done vaginoplasty on.
Why? Like, can someone tell him to pull up his fucking pants?
I'm worried that minors
No one wants to see that.
don't understand enough about themselves. They're not neurologically
Good for
developed
you
enough
for
yet to make
exercising, sir, but
permanent
please.
life-altering decisions.
Jesus Christ.
Just a very casual, dismissive
I did not
attitude
be
to a
asking to get
16-year-old
fucking
making
raped
a
in the butt.
decision that is a lifelong decision. There's no coming back from that.
Right, there isn't. And, 16 is obviously very, very young, and it's horrific that we're doing that to 16-year-olds.
You don't know anything at 16.
But then you have to consider that many times kids are being put down this path at even younger ages. I mean, we talked to quote-unquote gender-affirming pediatrician who puts kids on drugs at, 12 years old, 13 years old. So at very young ages, whether it's surgery or drugs that sterilize kids, we're being told that the child is, quote, making a decision at such a young age. But
You
that doesn't make any
don't
sense because
know
even the
shit
people
as a
who
child.
support giving sex change surgeries to 16-year-olds, if you ask them, well, should a 16-year-old be able to get a tattoo on their face or anywhere else on their body? Should a 16-year-old be able to buy a gun, buy alcohol? Like, any of
No.
these kinds of decisions, almost everybody would agree, well, no, that's too young. So if it's too young for that, then how's it not too young to make these life-altering, permanent changes to your body? That's the question they never have an answer to.
They don't have a fucking answer.
And talking about
Because it's just sick. It's wrong. It's not okay.
11 or 12.
And a lot of you are bad
FEMA
parents.
has
A lot of you are
handed
really
down
bad
its decision
parents.
to restrict
Should
trans
never have gotten
athletes
kids,
from the
ever.
women's side of the competition, but they did have
Fuck,
one
man.
exception if someone had transitioned, if a male athlete had
I don't
transitioned
know.
by the
I
age
think
of
you
12,
should have
then
to
they
pass
would
a
be able to
fucking. You should
compete
have a
in the
license
women's
to have a kid now.
competition.
Like,
Now,
I don't know.
FINA say
I
this
don't know
isn't
what
to
else. Like,
encourage anybody to transition that early, and they in fact say that's not a good idea. But you see this as almost a validation for transitioning children younger and younger.
Yeah, I don't. I know a lot of conservatives are celebrating this move, but I don't actually see it.
I thought I
as
was a
win. Now, the
vegetarian
win would
for an
be
entire year
if
when I was
the
younger.
governing bodies over these various
Like,
athletic competitions, if
did
they
I
just
do what
said, hey,
vegetarians
you
are
have to
supposed to
be
do?
a woman to
No.
compete
Was I
against
actually a
women, period.
vegetarian?
Doesn't matter what
No.
your doesn't matter anything else. You have to be a
I
female
just
competing
like
against women. Now, that would be
animals.
a win for sanity and for just truth and moral decency. But that's not what's happening here. All they're saying is, well, you have to. If a male wants to compete against women, he needs to start his transition younger, which is actually legitimizes.
So this is about the Olympic
and that's only
thing?
going to be used by the other side to say, well, see, this is why we got to get the kids on the drugs as early as possible, so that they're not left out of opportunities later in life. That's maybe looking at it as glass half empty, but that's also how I think it's going to be used.
Oh gosh, I hope that's not seen or interpreted that way, but I can understand why you have that fear. Now, back to what is a woman. You spoke to plenty of experts, and some of them were triggered by the strangest
This is so
things. Even the
stupid.
word truth was seen as triggering and transphobic. Let's have a look.
Well, I'm not even talking about social context. I'm just trying to start by getting to the truth.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really uncomfortable with that language of like getting to the truth. Again, in social life.
Why is that uncomfortable?
Because it sounds actually deeply transphobic to me. And if you keep probing, we're gonna stop the interview.
What a fucking... Oh, wow.
The word truth.
You remind me of Connor, and it makes me want to go find him.
How is the word truth
Like,
condescending?
hurt him.
Why don't you tell me what your truth is? And you're walking on 30 seconds more of thin ice before I get up.
Matt, how did you keep your cool throughout these interviews? Because just watching them is maddening. I mean, how can somebody be so offended by truth, by the word truth, by the pursuit of truth?
Yeah, it was a challenge sometimes. Sometimes a challenge not to laugh in their face. Sometimes a challenge not to scream at the outrageous, ridiculous things I'm being told. But what you just heard there, that really, almost every conversation with these people eventually devolves into some version of that.
Serious?
You get away from gender, and pretty soon you're getting into, well, what is truth? Is there a truth? Whose reality are we talking about? I mean, I had that.
So that happens when you have an only child that's a spoiled fucking brat.
Because what you find out is that at base, at bottom, all this gender ideology stuff, it's really a war on truth. It's really, really comes down to relativism and the belief that we all get our own truth and our own reality. And I think that's ultimately
Guess what?
they're
Even
trying
if you
to
do,
defend, I think.
I gotta tell you, no one cares.
It is a denial of truth,
Nobody.
A denial of logic,
No one gives a
denial
shit.
of biology sometimes. And these conversations that you had where you did keep your cool, my goodness, some of them are bordering on the absurd. We've got here another expert who's talking about, whether chickens laying eggs have been assigned a gender.
Male gametes. That's what makes me male.
No, your sperm don't make you male.
Then what does?
It's a constellation.
In reality.
That is a star.
Truth. Okay.
Whose truth are we talking about?
The same truth that says we're sitting in this room right now, you and I.
No, you're not listening.
You're fucking crazy!
Female chicken laying eggs. Did I assign female, or am I just observing a physical reality that's happening in the world?
Does a chicken have gender identity? Does a chicken cry? Does a chicken commit suicide? Let's frame it because you're trying.
Chicken has sex like any
Chicken
biological
has
organism.
an assigned gender.
This lady's so crazy.
Assign female to chickens when they lay eggs.
We assume they're female if they lay eggs.
Oh, goodness me. Now, Matt, there was a time when this sort of ideology was confined to university campuses, and people thought, oh, well, that's where you debate these sort of radical ideas. But this movement has got enormous disproportionate power.
This lady is fucking mentally ill.
Public institutions, but private institutions, a number of corporates that virtue signal about this issue. Can you just help us understand the power of this activist group, such a small group, but with such disproportionate influence and power?
Yeah, that's one of the reasons we made the movie, really, was for people to understand just how powerful this ideology is, how widespread it is. And that's one thing I've heard from people who've watched it is lots of people have told me, well, I didn't realize how bad it was until I saw the film. And that's not the only thing I want people to take away from the film, but that is one of the things I want them to take away is that this is not just something out on the fringes or, as you say, just in the universities anymore that we can ignore. It is everywhere. And I think what happened is, it seems like it came out of nowhere 5 or 10 years ago. But it really didn't. It made its way into the institutions, especially academia, government, media. It made its way into those institutions over the course of decades. And then from there, I think filtered down into the general population. And then maybe, 8-10 years ago is when it kind of it exploded onto the scene on a mainstream level. And now, you go anywhere and at least go anywhere in the Western world, and people are impacted by these ideas, and many people have bought into them without even realizing that they have.
It's a simple question that now terrifies politicians the world over.
No. See, like Chris Morgan, they wrote it. The guy's a fucking dumbass.
The tenets of people's religion and our policies that say that we accommodate those to the maximum extent possible in our city are very well known. And I think that we didn't react as quickly. The city staff did not, because this came to our attention a couple of weeks ago, to make it clear to those companies that were contracting with us that means what it says. It means that we accommodate those things, and that accommodation does not mean demotion, does not mean a pay.
Dude!
It does not mean, something that it results in termination for sure.
I'm sorry, but if you feel like that is necessary to verbalize
employees based on religious beliefs or to fail to accommodate them. That has always been clear. It should have been clearer than it was to these companies, and we've made it clear that anybody who has been
You know what? I can't wait to hear where the fucking order came from. I guarantee you. There's gonna be another one of my fucking I can just perceive the future apparently. It's unprecedented. Well, let me come and give everybody a great gift.
Weeks ago that she was pregnant. We were in the process of trying to get her set.
You know what? I'm not even indulging in that shit anymore. Like, fuck that. I love that my computer is so insanely overheating. Oh yeah, why? Because there's no fucking fan on it. Known to law enforcement, doesn't anybody who has any kind of opinion at all?
Yeah, I mean, she's
Aren't they all
approaching
known
4 weeks
to
in
law
jail now. I
enforcement?
think it
Because
was
law
nearly
enforcement
3
literally
weeks
do whatever the fuck
before,
they want now.
and she's rolled over 9
Which
days
also
right
includes
now
doing nothing.
for being annoying
That's
in
great.
public, for protesting the government when the government didn't want to hear from her. Really, that's what this is all about. And we've seen the unequal treatment of protesters, even in Ottawa, even over this past weekend. We had vegans getting a police escort up to Parliament Hill, holding their placards. But civil liberties lawyers were not allowed to walk around with a sign.
Actually, Sheila,
we're not allowed anywhere near the Hill.
No, we mentioned this earlier on the show. We also saw street preachers, people handing out religious pamphlets. The rule is you can walk around on the Hill. You can't be stationary because that might be the genesis. That might be the big bang of a convoy. So what the police were saying and the bylaw were saying, you can walk and talk, which is the language they use for prisoners at a penitentiary when it's exercise time. You know, you go in a circle, walk and talk. That's what Canadians
Are you
had
serious?
to do.
You live
Law-abiding
down the
Canadians,
street.
including, as Sheila said, folks, civil liberties lawyers. You could walk and talk. You just couldn't stand there with your sign. That might create some kind of a convoy 2.0. It's unbelievable, Sheila. I wouldn't have believed it if I didn't see it with my own eyes.
Those people seem like they're standing stationary, don't they?
Oh yeah, but
they're vegans, though they don't have the energy to walk around. I'm gonna get letters.
Well, Sheila, thank you so much for covering this bail hearing. Is there anything that you left out that is relevant to Tamara Leach's case?
Oh boy, it's so much. I mean, just everything. It's just the more you hear about just the level of the things the Crown is willing to do to get her. I mean, they sent 4 cops. I think it was 2 homicide cops. And the homicide detective Benson, and then I think a supervisor out to Medicine Hat to grab Tamara Leach to fly her back to Ottawa. And this, I mean, I guess my takeaway is don't get murdered in Ottawa because Deputy Dog is not going to solve the case here.
And Sheila, the perverse irony, as you well know, and you too, Tamara, is that contrary to the mainstream media narrative, crime went down in Ottawa when the Freedom Convoy was there. Not up, right? Down. So now you're telling me homicide detectives, and it's kind of funny too. Where is this push of law enforcement when it comes to our beloved colleague Alexa Lavoie that got shot with some kind of cylinder right in her thigh and tear gassed? And thank God it was her thigh, because if it was her head, I might be speaking of Alexa in the past tense.
Yeah.
When I queried at the press conference, Acting Chief Bell, he hadn't even heard of this, even though this was international news. Where are the homicide investigators when it comes to looking at why a police officer discharged a firearm against a journalist?
Well, and, if we really want to just look at the unequal treatment here, let us not forget the Antifa maniac who allegedly drove his crappy Jeep into a crowd of convoy protesters in Winnipeg.
Yep.
It was politically motivated violence, which is, I think, the definition of terrorism.
Yep.
He hit 4 people, 4 of them. By the grace of God and his own ineptitude, none of them were seriously hurt. But what was he attempting to do? Kill them? I'd like to hear those arguments. But you know what? He was released on bail the very next day.
And that's it. He doesn't have somebody going through his cell phone like Tamara does. He doesn't have restrictions on his movement the way Tamara did.
That's that motherfucker!
He can probably talk to us.
That's that motherfucker that pissed on my fucking car!
Radicalize him.
What are you gonna do? Nothing! If I do something, I'm gonna fucking kill him!
Of mischief has been
shit.
in jail now 3 weeks and then 9 more days for a 3-second breach, taking a picture with a fellow convoy supporter.
Fuck
Well,
you.
Sheila, I am sure in terms of
Oh
the
my god,
Justin
I want
Trudeau
to
Liberals
fucking hit him with
mindset
my car!
on the Jeep driver, he was doing what amounted to prudent public service, trying to get rid of some of the undesirables out there with the freedom movement. And if you think I'm exaggerating, we mentioned earlier in the show, our homegrown Al-Qaeda terrorist, he's not behind bars. He gets to fly around the country, even though allegedly he's on a no-fly list. He got an 8-figure check, 10.5 million, for killing one of our allies and partially blinding another. So, real.
That's fucking awesome! You get to see that fucking asshole drive by again and again. You're gonna do nothing. You should fucking hit him with my car. Fuck you. I hate you. Probably fucking paid him to do it. Like. You're such a fucking pussy. No fucking spine whatsoever. I will fucking kill him. Fuck you, Dom. Fucking asshole. Like, what did I do? I didn't do anything. Why would someone fucking do that? The only thing I can fucking think of is you! It's not fair. family just keeps getting shittier and shittier because of you. It was already shitty, but at least fucking wasn't like this. Please fucking let me die, please. I hate me. Why I just can't do this. I don't do anything to anybody. Please, someone fucking kill me. I just can't do this. I just don't understand what I did. Like, what am I supposed to do? I just try to be nice to everybody. Why would somebody piss on my car? If they pissed in my car before. Everyone just says I'm paranoid or fucking calls me a junkie. Like, fuck off. Good for fucking nothing, man. All you do is suck everything out of everybody else. Selfish. 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 Can't even walk my dog without almost getting hit by a car in the middle of the night. This is not fair. I don't deserve it. I really don't. I don't want anything. I don't ask for anything. I don't need anything from anybody. I hate you so much. Like, why don't you go in the fucking corner and go sell to some kids on the fucking street, you fucking idiot? Good fucking job, Dom. One fucking stop shop, right? Just get him a fucking porta potty while we're at it. You literally just hit my car. It's a piece of crap car anyway. Forget it, lady. Oh, the guys that pissed on my car, right? No? You have no idea? Forget it. Fucking, I can't.
I don't touch you, Karen.
Get the fuck out of here, lady. I have you on camera. I just saw you go away. Get out of my face. No, I'll scream if I want to scream because you just hit my car and you did nothing. Fucking, you were the one who pissed on my car too, aren't you? No, what are you gonna do about it? Nothing. She just hit my car. What are you gonna do about it? Nothing. Fucking useless. The guys who fucking pissed on my car. You're gonna do what? Nothing. Like fucking usual. How fucking usual. I get fucked and I get fucked and I get fucked again. She backed up into me. I have it on camera. No, it's not okay. Done. I'm done. I don't give a shit. She's acting like she has no fucking clue. Forget it. Honestly, the car's a piece of shit anyway. Like, wasn't even supposed to be in my car. It wasn't even supposed to be. No, you can't call the cops. Cops won't show up. Do I want you to call the cops for someone pissing on my car? What are you gonna do? Nothing. Fuck you, dog. Unfucking believable. Fucking asshole. Let's see all the fucking drugs I'm on, right? I'm a big drug-a-rooney. Why not? I only get to shoot people up with naloxone. It's gotta be someone who's fucked sober. Fucking done with your shit. Like, where are the fucking cops? Who the fuck knows? Nobody knows what the cops are, so... Unfucking believable. Where the fuck are my keys? I fucking can't. No, please, honestly, I would love it if there's somebody to call the fucking authorities. Because they don't know. Bunch of fucking pussies! Pussies! I'm sorry! Did I hit your fucking car? Whoops! My bad! Didn't